Okay, picture this. Investigators walk into a quiet apartment. There's no big fire, no sign of a break-in. But right there, in the middle of the room, is an armchair that's barely even scorched. And in it, a pile of fine, gray ash. Right next to it, a single human foot still in its slipper, completely untouched by fire. Now this sounds like something out of a horror movie, but it's a real, baffling scene that has confronted people for centuries.
And that's the big question, right? This is the core mystery of spontaneous human combustion, or SHC. It just seems to break all the rules of science. So how on earth is it possible? Well, the answer is hiding in the absolutely bizarre clues left behind at the scene.
You see, these scenes, they have a very specific forensic signature. It's something that sets them completely apart from any normal house fire and points to something, well, something much, much stranger. I mean, just look at how contradictory this all is. You have a body that's been exposed to so much heat that the bones are basically cremated, yet the victim's hands or feet are often perfectly fine. There's this greasy yellow soot, which is literally vaporized body fat, coating the ceiling, but the floor underneath is totally clean. For any investigator, this is a crime scene that just shouldn't be possible. The difference is just night and day. A regular fire spreads out, it chars everything it can reach. But in these cases, the heat is incredibly focused. It's localized. You could have a plastic remote control just a few feet away that's completely undamaged. It's like the body itself becomes the entire fire. And this idea, this belief that the fire actually starts inside the person, well, that's a story that goes way, way back.
To really get a grip on the modern mystery, we gotta rewind the clock a bit, because for hundreds of years, this wasn't seen as a forensic puzzle at all. It was seen as a kind of divine punishment.
So the whole idea kind of starts out as a medical oddity back in the 1600s, but by the Victorian era, oh man, it's a full-blown morality tale. The going theory was that heavy drinkers became so soaked in alcohol that their bodies were literally flammable. This idea got so popular that the famous author Charles Dickens actually used it to kill off a character in one of his books, and that sparked a massive public debate. This critic, George Henry Lewis, he called Dickens out on it. He basically said it was complete nonsense, a scientific impossibility. But Dickens, he fired right back, pointing to all these medical reports from the time. And this fight, this clash between what people wanted to believe and what science said was possible, has really defined this mystery ever since. It pushed investigators to finally find a real scientific answer.
And that brings us to the leading scientific theory today. It's an explanation for how a human body can literally consume itself in fire without an inferno raging around it. And the process is both elegantly simple and deeply unsettling. It's called the Wick Effect. And the best way to think about it is like a candle, just turned inside out. The body's fat is the wax, that's the fuel, and the person's clothing, that acts as the wick. So this isn't some sudden explosive combustion. It's a slow, steady, methodical burn.
So here's how it plays out. It starts with a simple external spark. Maybe a cigarette gets dropped, and it sets a person's shirt on fire. That little flame eventually burns through the skin and reaches the layer of body fat right underneath. That fat melts, and it soaks into the clothing, just like wax soaking into a candle wick. And boom, you've just created a self-sustaining fuel source that can just sit there and smolder for hours.
Now this right here is the key to the whole puzzle. To cremate bone, you need insane temperatures. We're talking over 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. A typical house fire often doesn't get hot enough for long enough to do that. But the Wick effect, it works like a slow cooker. It maintains a really steady, localized heat right up against the body for hours on end, slowly turning the bones to ash without setting the entire room on fire.
Okay, so let's take this theory and apply it to maybe the most famous and most baffling case in the history of the FBI, just to see how it all stacks up.
We're heading to St. Petersburg, Florida in 1951. A landlady goes to deliver a telegram to a 67-year-old woman named Mary Reeser. But when she reaches for the doorknob, it's blazing hot to the touch. What they found inside was straight out of a nightmare. Mary Reeser was gone. In her place, a pile of ash, a weirdly shrunken skull, and her left foot, perfectly fine in its little satin slipper. And right next to the chair, a stack of newspapers, totally fine. The FBI eventually said she probably fell asleep smoking, which triggered the Wick effect. But the sheer totality of the cremation has kept this mystery alive for decades. The how is pretty chilling, but it's the who that makes the Wick effect so tragically believable. It turns out there's a very clear victim profile.
The victims are almost always elderly people who live alone and have some kind of limited mobility. And very often, they're smokers. This tells you it isn't some random supernatural event. It's a tragedy that's born from isolation and frailty. If you're someone who can't quickly get up and put out a small fire on your clothes, you are, tragically, the perfect candidate for this horrific chain of events to start.
For years, most scientists just wrote off SHC as a historical misunderstanding. You know, a myth. But then, a case in the 21st century happened that forced officials to rethink everything. Let's jump forward to 2010, over in Galway, Ireland. A death scene there brought this centuries-old mystery roaring back to life, right into a modern courtroom.
The body of a 76-year-old man, Michael Faraday, was found in his home. And the scene was an exact copy of the classic cases we've been talking about. His body was almost completely cremated, and the fire damage was limited to the floor right under him and the ceiling directly above him. Investigators looked everywhere. They found zero evidence of foul play, no accelerants, nothing.
And this is where the story takes a truly shocking turn. After a complete investigation, the coroner, a Dr. Ciaran McLaughlin, officially recorded the cause of death as spontaneous human combustion. For the first time in modern history, a government official legally validated the phenomenon, basically saying that no other explanation fit the facts.
So, let's recap. We have a plausible scientific theory in the Wick Effect, and we have an official modern ruling from a coroner. So why does this whole thing still feel so supernatural, so deeply terrifying?
Well, the answer really is psychological. Spontaneous human combustion taps into this primal fear that we can't actually control our own bodies, that something deep inside us could just turn on us. It's the ultimate internal traitor story. The image of a body reduced to nothing but ash is so clean, so complete, and so weird that our brains almost want to believe it's an unsolvable mystery.
It's really the perfect storm of forensic science and urban legend. The evidence strongly points to a tragic, explainable accident, the Wick Effect. But that official verdict in Ireland, combined with our own deep-seated fears, keeps the question alive and burning. So, is the case really closed? Or is there still something we don't quite understand about the fire within?